Well, I'll just let everybody know I do a lot, and I have a man of many hats. But when Robert contacted me, this is the perfect timing for this talk, and I want everybody to get something out of this. And I'm a man behind my word. If you don't understand it or you have questions, you're welcome to text me, email me, or give me a call on the phone. I want people to be sustainable because we look at people dropping out of beekeeping after 3 and 5 years because they're not sustainable. You keep putting money into the beekeeping, and it's something where I want beekeepers to learn a little bit, be sustainable, and have some fun. So we're going to go to backyard queen rearing. I'm not going to go through the whole thing myself, but I started this out as a master gardener years ago after my dad died. Became an Ohio certified volunteer naturalist, got into OSBA. My mentor is Dwight Wilson, and if you know Dwight Wilson, he's just a man, a heart of gold of beekeepers. After that, I mean, that's been 18 years ago. I got into forestry, private applicator's license, instrumental insemination over with Crispin Given, pollinator specialist with OSU, the Denise Ellsworth, became an inspector with Barb Bletcher for ODA. And then you guys have seen my name all over OSBA stuff. I love to volunteer and I love to give time. And I've won a few awards in between then. My most honored claim to fame is when we built the Pollinator Sanctuary and Training Facility in Defiance County. It's a 40-foot by 40-foot fenced-in area that we take people out and teach them queen rearing. We teach them checkerboarding and everything that you guys are doing at different times. Hands-on, we do it once a month. And we of the NACO, which is all the counties throughout the entire United States, we won first place in outreach for kids and actually teaching people stuff, so being sustainable. So in beekeeping, I want you to think about all the things that you're going to need to become a successful backyard queen rearing. So it's the time. It's no longer your schedule. It's the schedule that you're going to be on the queen. When she's due to arrive in 16 days, she doesn't care if you're on a vacation or where you're at. Things happen. So there's a calendar I'm going to share with you, a QR mobile. So if you're on the techie side like I am, there's an app for it. You can set the reminder off at 8 o'clock in the morning. It'll tell you this batch of queens, you give it a specific name, it's going to be due to arrive or they're out on mating flights. So your resources is all the stuff that you have. Remember your lovable spouse at the end, because we all know beekeeping's cheap, correct? And the money side of it is when you get to around start buying all those other things in the catalogs that you didn't know before, the grafting tools, the frames, and all the equipment. You definitely have to be the weatherman or weather lady because you have to know, is that queen going to go out and get a good mating flight or is she not? And what your weather is coming up for those next few weeks. The contractor, same thing. You're going to build your gear. If you're not, tonight you're the student. And after that, I want you to be the mentor and get, no matter what you do, I want you at least to try to graft 2 or 3 queens this year. If you're successful, build upon that success and keep going from there. If you're not, then learn from your mistakes. Do outreach with Robert, myself. I'll stand behind, like I said, and then go from there. SOP, and I want everybody to agree with me on this, and you got to think about this. I'm not going to jump on my soapbox like I usually do and talk about Varroa because you've probably been Varroa out. But healthy bees, you can't graft queens from sick bees. You can't have honey from sick bees. You can't make splits from sick bees. So healthy bees are low or a 0 mite tolerance. That 1 or 2 mites, yes, you can still get away with it and have healthy bees. But that also affects the drone, so the drone population on this. The honey, the nectar, the pollen, all those supplemental feedings, we put in pollen patty 1-to-1, and you have to be an accurate record keeper. You know, when did you graft those queens? What size you grafted those queens? Best beekeepers I know have a journal or they're recording and with all kinds of different devices. If you're a paper and pencil person like myself, write it down. If you like the laptops or the iPads and things, just make sure what your records are and what you're doing with it. Your Varroa load, this is me as an inspector. That's 97 mites per 900 in the sample. I do not like to say go out and buy things because all of a sudden, it might not work for you. But if you're going to stay on top of your mites, get the easy Varroa check. Check your bees once a month when you pay your bills or whatever because you're killing 300 bees. But remember, you're taking a scientific number and a good accurate number, not like the sugar shake, and you're running, you're checking your mites, and you're saving that colony that you've spent all year on or the year before to have healthy bees. So enough of that. So on to quality queens. Do you call this a quality queen? And this could happen in the springtime. She ran out of sperm and a spermatheca. She just didn't lay. There could be a health issue. There could be a quality issue. That's the shotgun pattern. So that's not a quality queen. And then we all have the Kodak moment with our queens that we love this pattern. And if you see on this, you'll see that, let's get the laser pointer here, that nice frame of brood. You got some heater holes, that 10% or that small area of the drones, and that capped honey or that honey dome over the top. And that's what you want to see. I want a queen that's laying it on and not that shotgun pattern. Genetics and traits. I'm going to say this, and people, you can still have I&I queens or instrumentally inseminated queens that are Buckfast or Carnolian or Russian. But let's just be honest. If you're open mating and you're not going through that expense of having, Sue Colby queen at $800, you have mutts. But we also have genetics or traits of those mutts that we don't want to turn on. And what's the meanest hive that you have? You check it last because you don't want them zipping up your pants leg or they're jumping in your face or you're getting stung. And you always check the nicer queens first. So I want you to remember that going forward, that I want those nice, gentle queens and those genetics and those traits. So we have those nice queens in there. Those are not my pictures. I pull some of these off the net. As I do these talks, I try to switch them out with mine. So we all want those nice queens, those mated queens, when their wings are sitting back on the third or fourth targa, or their midsection in the back. Nice and plump. They have that 8 microliters of semen, and they're going to lay a good 2 years solid without being inferior or having anything wrong with them. And then the instrumentally inseminated queens is when we put the dots on or put the numbers on them, or you can mark your queens, or if you buy it from a queen breeder, they can mark them for you. You need to understand the cells and the progression of having a queen cell. So in the top, we have a queen cup. It doesn't matter the breed of bees. Some you're going to see 2 or 3 in a colony. Some you'll see 15 or more. But that queen cup, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the bees preparing that if they get ready and if they get jammed up or other things happen, that they can turn on and make a flight and take off. The best way to check that is to put that frame of the sun over your shoulder, look down inside that cup, and think of it as like a coffee cup upside down. If that coffee cup is dry, there's nothing wrong, and the bees have room. So when I say gaps of bees, I'm looking at down at the top in a 10-frame box, I have 11 gaps. If the bees are 80 to 90% and jamming that completely up, or bees are bearding out in the front and it's nowhere to go, that's when that queen is going to start. They're going to put her on a crash diet, and that queen's going to start laying eggs. On the bottom left, you'll see it where it has that royal jelly. So I looked inside that cup. Now, if you've seen it and it has a little bit of royal jelly at the bottom, not as much as this, that old queen might be there. So if you flip that frame over and you look down in bottom and a lot of those cups are dry and all of a sudden you notice 1 or 2 are wet, or they have that little tiny egg or larvae in it, look for that old queen and instantly take that old queen and make a split and let these develop if you want. Because once the bees get into swarm mode, it's hard to get them back out. So this is day 2, 3, and 4. Then all of a sudden the bees start drawing this out in this center photo. Once they start drawing this out, you're going to see at least 2/3 of this, or 1/3, maybe half of that, maybe, depending on how much production of royal jelly they have. But these nurse bees keep going inside and regurgitating from the vitellogelin in their head, and they're regurgitating royal jelly. Before it's capped, it's up to day 9. So at day 9 and 10, now off to the right, you'll see that thing, it's capped. At this point, either on the middle or the right, that old queen is gone. Half your workforce is gone. So those bees are already gone. You get in there and you start seeing these peanuts. Now, what are you going to do? At this point, you'll see the tip of this. Let me go back one. You'll still see this gnarly wax. Remember, this raw peanut that you're looking at all the way down to the tip. It's not thinned out yet. So this could be up to day 12, and we'll go through the timing a little bit more. At the tip of this, you're starting to see it thinned out, where the bees are starting to thin this out, and you're seeing the cocoon or that spun web of that nurse or that worker on the inside, or that, nurse that's turned into a queen on the inside. There's still tons of royal jelly, and they're getting ready for her to be prepared to emerge. That's day 13 and 14. If you, Tehran, open that up, here's a scrawny little queen, but now I see this little slit where her mandible has shoved out to the outside, and she's starting to chew that open. If so, you can take a toothpick, or if you have a German tool, and you can pop that open, and here comes that virgin queen that's just going to walk right out on you. If you ever open it up and you see this, it's the trap door. Here's the trap door. It's hung open. There's the chewed open cell. That virgin queen's already running around, and you might even see one or two of them at that point. You can see a combination of it's already chewed open, and there's other queens in here. If it's already chewed open, don't try to find that virgin queen. She's running around. Try to save the queens that are being opened, or at that point getting ready to open, and make your splits. Or you could take that queen, once she emerges, put her in a queen clip, then put her in a JBZ, a California, and make a split. So you got a virgin queen you're making a split with. So you need to know, remember, it's capped on day 10, and it emerges on day 16. And you can look at the tip and see those different things that are going on. Remember the queen, the other drones, which when we start doing all this, we need to see drones. By now, everybody in Ohio should have, and I just talked to Rich up in Michigan, everybody sees drones running around. They're out flying. There's things you can do. You can take a drone between your fingers, invert them, and you can actually see that the endophallus that has the sperm on the end of it, on his end of his phallus. So remember, here's the queen cup, the queen cell drawn out, the larvae, and then there you go. She's starting to emerge. Queens have QMP, or that queen mandible pheromone. There's the whole thing of what it is. No one's ever made it up, but they do have, like, lemongrass is what we smell, and then they have the swarm baits that you can also get. QMP, when you're doing grafting, there's different types of grafting, and we're going to go through all of them, and every one of them you guys can do. QMP also, when you start grafting queens, you'll notice in this photo, these couple queens right here, every bee is all over it. They're feeding that queen as much as they can. She's got a better QMP or better smell. When we pick the larvae, like you're going to do Doolittle method, and I go in here and select a larvae out, it might not be the perfect super sister of that colony, and she might not have the smell. So this one over here is going to get starved out. And you'll see that the more you graft, here's another one, and these are my grafts. This one over here had no nurse bees feeding her. But these over here, you can take those cells or that JBC cage, shake the bees off or blow them off, and they instantly jump right back on. That means that queen has great QMP, great smell as a virgin, and she's going to be even better yet when she gets into a mated queen. So the better the QMP, and this is a way to check it. You're not going to know that when you're doing other things. And I'll tell you the pros and cons of each. Your stock selection. Please do not. We all have hives that we're scared of. And be honest with yourself. Is there that one colony that you open up and you go, oh, I know I'm going to get stung? Do not take that and overbreed it and say, okay, I want 10 of her. Or if you're going to sell nukes, don't take a new beginning beekeeper and take a hot stock or a hot genetics and to run and sell that to somebody else, because you're just creating more problems. But I want a good queen that overwinters with a good size colony. I want one for 90% of us in here that has great honey production. You know, remember the season, was it wet and cold and raining like it was last year? You got to kind of take those things into effect. But did they survive over the entire winter with their honey production, and you didn't have to babysit them? I don't want to have to babysit bees. If you get to that point, off with her head, put in a new queen. Are they hygienic? Did you have problems with chalk brood in the spring? And that's cold, wet, rainy season in the spring that we're seeing now. If you do see hygienic problems, off with her head, new queen. You can also purchase them from a quality queen breeder. I know Peggy's on here. I used to do it. I'll probably get back into it in a couple years. Brood rearing. Remember that quality, that Kodak moment when you see that frame. That's the kind of queen that you want. And the Varroa Hygienics, you can turn on and do with ankle biters. You can do the stock from Purdue. It's a tool in the toolbox, and it helps take care of Varroa, but it's not 100%. So some of the stock that I have, this is my setups. I have a full-size box. You know, these are building up in the spring. I put nukes right beside it. I face the entrance the opposite way. So for about every 2 colonies I have a nuke that is supportive. And when I mean supportive, that means if something happens in this box at the top here, that I can take this nuke, walk right over and put that nuke right back and combine it. I don't have to go out and buy a nuke or a queen. I have extra resources. And with this nuke, so in the lower left, let's just say I have that nuke and they outgrow it. What can I do? Throw on another box. Put on cut comb at the top. Or when you start seeing in these 4 in the middle, I see tons of cat brood. Steal all the cat brood and give it to one of these other colonies that's a little bit suffering, that needs that extra boost. So every deep frame is 8,000 workers. So if I have a colony over here that's a little bit behind, take 3 frames of cat brood and give it over here. Shake all the bees off, put it in one of these colonies, and boost their numbers up. So it's easy to do, but most of us in here are going to do open breeding. Can we get the slides afterwards? We're going to record it. So Steve, you're all set. So when I want you to think about when you're going to do open breeding, I want you to remember who's the neighbor. What genetics or traits do I have in my 5-mile area? So what I done for Defiance County, and this was my 2017 inspections for ODA, I went around and you can see class members, everybody that I trained. Commercial beekeeper A, commercial beekeeper B, commercial beekeeper F is a person who lost 800 colonies in 1 year due to Varroa. Dead outs, so people that had dead outs or dead colonies. Non-consent, queen rearing people, and then registered owners. And I went out, and when I set my yards up, I set them away. I set them to beekeepers that are close to me that I want that same genetics. So I don't want to hear that my neighbor by way the crow flies that, oh yeah, I got this colony that they scare me every time. Or I can't even check this colony because they're constantly just all over me. If you're like that, find another place to let your nukes or your other hives mate. Or go out to that person and say, hey, you know what? I got 2 good quality queens. Why don't I help you kill that hot queen and I'll give you 2 queens? And it's just saving you because your queens are going to mate with his drones or vice versa. Another way to do that is to set up your own yards. So if you can't go out and you can check that, I mean, that's something you can do on Google Earth and perimeter that out. Or here's my mating yard. And for this, I just have Wilson, Kyle, Chris, Doug, and Jeff. And I know that they're out about 1.5 miles out. Remember, your drones are only going to go out a half mile because they have to feed every 25 minutes. That mile is where your virgin queens are going to go out to, and they're going to go out to that mile area, and they're going to start looking for a DCA. So if I know these people are good beekeepers, we come to the club, we all kind of support each other, and they have quality stuff, and they're going to help you the same point. They want you to have quality stuff, so now you can breed back and forth. Another way to do this on your own, if you have enough area, and I'll show you a map of my area here in a minute, but if you have enough area that you can set up your own drones or your own out yards. So for me, here's myself, I have 6 of them. I have just a hive stand like I showed you before, and it's just got 2 or 3 hives on it. So I put it around the outside, and that's the stock that I want. So I've bought queens from Nina Bagley. I've bought them from Tim Arhite. I bought them from Indiana. I bought some from different people around my area. And that's the stock I want, that people tell me that, I can hold the frame up and the bees just walk right across. The queen just goes over and lays an egg right in front of me. I don't want bees that are runny or things that jump in my face. I want a quality queen, and that's what I get. So this is my house right here. This is the farm where I have all my bees at. So that's my main yard. A mile and a half away, I own another property that has a pond on it that we just go out to, and that's my other mating area. And it's roughly about 1.75 miles by GPS. And then on that mile and a half on the outside, I just set up yards. I went and talked to the farmers, take them a quart of honey, and just say, I want to put a hive stand up, try to keep it away from their house or put it along the ditch line. And I know this ain't going to work for everybody, but just go out, drive out, set your yards up. So now I know that these queens here are going to go out to this DCA or come over here and vice versa. So there's no way that they're going to get jammed up. And it's easy to go out and talk to the farmers, especially, and this is in Northwest Ohio, so I'm a half hour from Michigan, half hour from Indiana. Everything's in squares, so you can see the nice square miles. And it's easy to go out and talk to the farmers and just say, hey, I want to put up a hive stand, and this is what I set up. Your nukes. When you have nukes, and there's all kinds of nukes, and I'm going to tell you some pros and cons. The two-frame nuke, I don't like, and this is me personally, because when you have a nuke set up and that queen's laying, and you want to take away a frame, that frame, you're taking 50% of her resources away. So say she had one frame with all brood and another one pollen and honey. You take one of them frames, now she's got all pollen and honey and no brood, or vice versa. The 5-frame nuke I love, but remember, you're talking 5 frames to set stuff up. The little feeder on top, I actually have a fly tool, or you can take a mason jar, put it on the top and do it with a scroll saw, but you want that neck to just go through, and that way when I walk past, and I'll show you another picture of all my other nukes, this is the ones I started with Dwight Wilson. You can put the feeder on top, and I can walk by at any time and see what their feed is at. I don't want to give them so much feed that they backfill, but it's a nice little area with a traveling cover. You have it's a 5/5, but it's kind of a thing of Michael Palmer, but it's got paneling in between. It's got a real thin 1/4 inch, or you can use Lexan in between. This is a good setup, and what you're going to do, you're going to close off one side, so the first hive goes out the front, the other colony goes out the back. And then I kind of made a split from that, and I'll show you the difference. Tim Arhite was running this, and Gary from Indiana, I went to his queen rearing setup, and he's got 2, 2, 2, and 2, but he was the same way. He can pull this divider up and run 4, 4, or pull all the dividers up. So he made his out of Lexan where they just slide up and down, and now if a queen fails, he can just pull that slider up, those 2 colonies merge, and he can change kind of things around, and it's a nice little setup. This is the Michael Palmer method, is the 4/4, which is a nice setup. The bottom is just a deep with 4 frames, but the top is split into little sections where I can stack these up. It's a little bit different, but it all depends on your resources, what you have and what you want to run with. They also have mini nukes from Man Lake. I think there's a couple other places that sell them. And then they have the double nukes. The only reason, my drawback on these is, if I'm going to sell a queen, I want to make sure a queen lays 2 frames of a deep. If that queen lays that little tiny area brood, is that a quality queen? And I say no, because I want her to lay an entire frame, at least 2, of eggs, and I want to see what that pattern is. I want to make sure it's not drone, worker, drone, or spotty brood. So I do not like these just for that fact. The other things you can do, if you're a small beekeeper like a lot of you might be, you can use the Fowler board, and this is just taking a colony. It actually hangs on the rest, goes all the way to the bottom, and it just slides back and forth. So you can close off the entire bottom, drill a hole to the front, drill one hole to the right or to the left and right, and just use this Fowler and let it slide from left to right. So you can have a 2-frame with a 6-frame. If you have 8-frame equipment, you can have 4 and 4 or 3 and 4, depending. So this is a real easy tool to do that with. Here's a 2, 3, 3, and 3. So there's 9 in that box. And what you do with this is there's just inner covers that pop up. In this, when you have multiple colonies, when you're popping up one top, you keep the others closed because they'll come up over the top and they'll start battling out with each other. Paul has a question. I'm sorry, Paul, I just seen this. How would you know if your mating areas How would I know if there are mating areas near my location? Have everybody in the club take a pin map with a GPS. You could do it on Google, print the whole thing out as big as you can get it, and have everybody kind of circle where they're at. And then you can also do it in GPS. If you want to know every beekeeper in your area, then you have a right to know through ODA, and you can ask for all the beekeepers in the area, and they have to give you that list. There's some other methods this way. The mini frames. My favorite is the 4x4 Michael Palmer. So you see this entrance comes to the front, the other one goes to the back. So this is one of my setups. I probably got 40 of those. My favorites are my queen castles. So I took a standard deep 10 frame, put plexiglass dividers in 3, 3, and 3. This one comes out, goes to the left. This one comes out, goes to the right. And there is an imaginary line here in the front. The bees will come up and they'll somewhat defend. They will not fight, but there's like a dead zone area. So it's like the invisible line at the China line or DMZ zone. The bees will come up. They'll kind of guard that area. And then this one in the middle goes out the back. It's easy to do. It's easy to make. You don't have to turn on, do too many things to your box. And if I want to combine them, all I got to do is pull the dividers up and it's ready to go. So this is my queen castle that I use for a lot of different stuff. So the pressure and what's going on right now, we're all feeling this crunch. Tons of nectars coming in, tons of pollens coming in, and the bees are blowing up and they're getting into this natural swarm mode where you're going to see a lot of stuff. This is the perfect time. We have the weather, even though it's not great, it's still good. We have pollen and nectar coming in. You can supplement a little bit if you need to. And we have tons of healthy bees. So if you do your alcohol washes, you know your mite count is low. This is the time to start taking frames of brood and making a queen castle. So I'm just going to jump back one slide. So if I took this colony here, either one of these, I'm going to start dividing things up. I'm going to put a frame of resources, a frame of honey in here, a frame of eggs, and a frame of brood. And then I can start doing any of these other methods to start raising queens. And now in one deep, I can have 3 different colonies to do these methods with. So we've all seen the swarm cells. They could be on the inside. They could be along the bottom. They could be anywhere. We talked about the different stages. Perfect time to make a split. So remember, if they're already capped or they're chewed out or the queen's coming out, the old queen is gone. Hopefully, you had time or resources to catch that swarm also. If not, you at least that feral colony now that's going to be out there is going to have drones for you to mate with for this next generation or these next splits. So when you do that, that's a perfect time to do this. So when we see swarm cells, there's some different things in here. If they're up against and you have 1 swarm cell per frame, which is very rare, or 1 or 2 on opposite sides, you can make a split. So when you make that split, if the old queen is gone, you're going to take an open nectar or pollen, a frame of capped brood. This slot in the center is going to go for that queen cell. And then you're going to put capped brood with it, some more open pollen or nectar. You can put on a feeder if you want. And I want this to be jammed up with nurse bees. Now, if you don't know what nurse bees are, so you got frames of capped brood or getting capped, you're going to pull the frame up. You're going to check 2 or 3 times and make sure there's no other queen. And you're going to just go over to the top, shake the nurse bees in, and face that entrance away the opposite or move that colony to another yard. And you're going to try and raise that queen, or they're going to raise that queen cell for you. So here's one on both sides. I would not put more than 2 queen cells in that split for the fact that queen's going to come out. If she's this one on the left, she comes out by herself. She's going to go out, mate in 7 to 10 days, and then she's going to come back and start laying. And then after 2 weeks, you're going to check that brood or see what that egg pattern is. If there's 2, one's going to kill the other, or if this one emerges first, she's going to go up and kill this one. If they emerge at the same time, they lock up and they start killing each other. You don't want that queen to have to fight 10 other cells, because by the time she fights all that and then goes out and mates, she's never going to make it back. And please remember, if you put out 10 colonies, there's always bees or queens that are going to get picked off by birds. They'll never come back, or they'll drift and they'll look for a queenless colony, so they might not make it back. If you've ever pulled up a frame and you have a queen cell on the bottom of that frame, here's another thing to do. Take that nuke and take a 1 inch or a 3/4 inch spacer along the bottom. So now when this queen cell comes in, it'll hang and still have enough room for her to chew out and hang that trap door to get out. And that's a good way to do that. The same way, what if I have these queen cells that hang and protrude way out? And I've seen a lot of them before. What you can do is just take one frame away. So actually, instead of having 5 in that box, you're going to go down to 4. I'm going to slide this in and slide this frame up enough to where it's just about to touch it, but the bees can take that 3/8 bee space and climb over, still gyrate, or climb on that cell and gyrate and warm that cell back up to 94, 95 degrees and let that queen emerge. And again, only 2 of them, but please remember when you're leaving these queen cells, I don't want a queen cell the size of the tip of my pinky. I want a queen cell big, long, so a long thorax. I want to see if you can turn on and you can put an LED flashlight behind it, and it's called candling. If you've ever candled eggs, you can look inside of there and see that there's a nice quality queen. That little tiny cell, if it's an emergency cell, is that going to make a quality queen? Absolutely not. So that's some ways of nature. That's just you seeing things, or maybe you weren't in the yard, or maybe something happened, or you had to go on vacation, or something medical happened. You can come back, and if you see swarm cells, that's instantly some splits. And then always put at least 1 or 2 of those queen cells in your original colony, so you can turn on, and those will go out and mate. So what happens? The original big colony that you had that had 60,000 bees in it, that queen fails. But this split that you had, or maybe 2 splits, you had a quality queen in that. Now you take that split and take that quality queen and put it back in your big colony. Now you've just created your own resources and you're sustainable. You didn't have to call Tim or call somebody and say, hey, can I get a queen? Because most of the queen rearers are going to tell you what? I'm sorry, I'm out 6 weeks. These are already sold. And when you need a queen, you need a queen. You shouldn't have to wait on anybody. But remember, for every 2 colonies, you should have a nuke. And this is just an emergency resource and stuff you can steal from. So we're going to talk about, when I say grafting, it's all these various methods. We're kind of manipulating the bees or manipulating them into raising their own queens. I don't want to have to teach you Doolittle. And there's a lot of skill to it. You can talk to Peggy Garnes, Tim Arheit, anybody or Nina who raises queens. So we're going to teach you things that you can do on your own, raise a few queens, and be sustainable when you do it. And the best part of this is practice, practice, practice. Paul, so you're splitting before the queen cells are capped. No. Splitting is when they're capped. I want to see that queen cell capped at day 10. If it's capped at day 10, you're not going to know if it's day 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, or if she's getting ready to chew out. So, and thank you for popping that up, Paul. If you pull that frame up, don't take that frame and do this or lay it on the side and do all kinds of stuff with it, because as she's a larvae hanging or suspending in that royal jelly, when she drops, if you bounce her and she comes down butt first, she'll never emerge. So when you come up, it's like fine china. You got your wife's or your grandmother's fine china. That frame comes out, it's leaned up against, it's put in a box, and it's protected the entire time. So always make sure that they're capped or they're drawn all the way out and you can see that they're just getting ready to cap it. Thank you, Paul. So OSBA's got an Excel sheet, and I'll make this available to Robert. If you have Excel or you have Google Drive, which most of you have, if you have a Gmail account, you can put this in, you put the date that you're going to graft, and it automatically gives you these important dates. And that's in Excel. It's not available in a PDF. So if you have Excel or have a Google Drive that has Excel, you can do it that way. Or I can just send you the sheet. I'll send Robert the sheet, and you can print it out in a PDF, and it kind of tells you the days on the side. A real quick layout of that. Day 1, the queen's going to lay the egg. Day 2, the egg starts to fall. Day 3, that larvae emerges from the egg. It eats her own sac or eats the own egg. Day 4 is grafting day. That's when you're going to do Doolittle method. That's why I say grafting day. or you're going to start manipulating this hive between the egg or the larvae. So the different aspects of this. Day 10, you're going to check for all capped cells. That means that queen cell is capped at the top. The critical days are 10, 11, and 12. Remember, she's suspended in the royal jelly. If you knock her down and she's butt first, she'll never chew out, or she'll grow up and then she'll just sit inside and starve. Or she'll fall to the side if she's a small enough larvae. At day 14, that's when you're going to create your nukes, or you're going to get ready to sell stuff or do replacements. So do you have an extra, say, 3 or 4 queen cells? You want to make 2 or 3 splits up and you want to sell them as nukes. Good day to set those up and have them ready. Do you want to replace some old queens with some new queens? Maybe that queen's been there 2 years or more. Or maybe she's laying that shotgun pattern. A good time to replace her. Or if you have 2 extra nukes around, fill them up with gear. And remember, if you have a nuke that starts to bulge out, throw on another deep. Throw on another deep. A 5/5/5. And they'll produce just as much because they want to be a big colony. So on day 16, you're going to check for that queen cell that emerged. Remember that little chewed out mark of that trap door. Day 18, you're going to check that cell. By day 18, you'll see that tip that'll get black. That means that larvae, or that if she died as a larvae, it'll be black. You can take a toothpick and pick the tip open. You can even do that on day 16 or 17. So if you think, I've already seen it as day 10 and I kind of timed that out, she should be emerged today or tomorrow. Sometimes you can pick that open and a new queen will walk right on out. So there's some times to check that. On day 22, you're going to check for mating flights. And all you're going to do, you're just going to go in there and make sure she's got tons of resources, and she's going to be making that mating flight. So please don't bother the colony at that time. Day 34, so a whole entire month has disappeared. Then you're going to go in and check for eggs. Remember, virgin queens, if she goes out and makes a nice mated flight, we all know that she goes out and mates with 20 to 30 drones. She's a little party girl. She comes out. She starts to lay. She doesn't understand how to lay those eggs. So remember, in the bottom of the cell, if you see 2 eggs, and then the next cell you see 1 and maybe 2 or maybe 3 at the very bottom, and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. That's that new queen that's just starting to figure out how to lay them eggs. Now, if you start seeing eggs on the side walls, you can see 10 eggs on all of the side walls. Then you have a laying worker. But you're not going to have that laying worker because you're going to keep checking your bees. So if you see no eggs at that point, go back in day 37 and check for larvae. You can, now remember the weather man or weather lady, if you had bad weather for an entire week, she's not going to get a mating flight. So it might be pushed back a little bit more. But if she goes back, if she doesn't have, or she just has a little patch of eggs, put it back together, put a note on there, check in 1 week. And then all of a sudden, when she starts catching on, then you see eggs all over the place. And her spermatheca should be full at that point. Day 37, now you're going to check and make sure those eggs have turned into workers. And I want to see that nice level area of all workers. If I start seeing tons and tons of drones, and that whole larvae is filled up, or that cell is filled up with that larvae, and all the cappings are starting to be extended, and you have tons of drones, maybe she didn't get a good flight. Maybe you don't have a good DCA. Maybe the weather was bad for a whole entire 2 weeks that she never got out. And then you have to do other stuff. And then day 40, you have to evaluate this. What are you going to do? Is she a quality queen? Did she lay 2 frames of deep? And you can sell her. You can put her in a split. You can re-queen your own colonies. Take her to a club meeting. Sell her off. And then, or is she bad and off with her head? But remember this. Take your old queens. Put a dark vial, dark browner bag like the perfume and stuff. 90 to 70% alcohol. Take all your old queens, put them in there, and mash them up with a stick. Now you've made your own QMP or bait pheromone that you can bait out. Hopefully, give me a sign or a thumbs up or whatever if you put out bait hives. We should all be putting out bait hives right now. So now you just made your own QMP or bait lure that you could take a Q-tip, put it in that queen lure on both sides, take the Q-tip, shove it to the back of the box on the bait hive, and now you've turned on and just made your own QMP free of charge. And I see some of you on here that had it. Good job. If you're the geeky style, there's called QR Mobile. It's a little logo like this. It looks like a queen top. The full version is a whole dollar. And this is where you can open it up. Pole line queens. We went down south with Joe Kovaleski and that and got some pole lines from USDA. You set in the dates. It automatically has a reminder. You can say it. I get up at 9 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock or 7. You can set the alarm and tell you, okay, the pole lines are emerging today. Let's say the yellow cups that you grafted, they're going to turn on do mating flights today. Or the red cups, you just turn on done that, they should be capped today. This will tell you that calendar for you. And it also has the daily reminders. Now, when you turn on open up the Dayton or Man Lake, here's all that excess stuff that you might not have known out before. Now you have the JBZs, the California cages. A good sharp utility knife, or go to Dollar Tree and get some of the butter or the bread knives. That's a good thing to get. You know, the battery boxes. A lot of this stuff I'm going to teach you is real wax foundation. So you can cut them cells off and do some stuff. The other JBZ cages. Here's all that other equipment. Find what works for you or the method it works. And don't go out and buy tons of it right now. Just buy enough to get you going. And then work your system. If you have time to do it, if you have resources to do it, and if you fail at a nuke and you failed at raising one queen, put it back to the whip pull or combine it back with the colony and do another split and try it at another time. So here's all the other toys with it. So option 1 is that four. It's just a Fowler board. There's a 10 frame box and I can slide this back and forth and do what I want with it. Or if you have the Fowler board and you have a double, 2 deeps. Or that could be 2 mediums. So here's where I'm going to put my graphs if I'm going to do that. Or I could take a Fowler board and slide it left and right. So some options you can use. Or if you have a full big colony, put your graphs. I want it all with the brood around it. I want that centralized heat. I want all the nurse bees right around it. I don't want to put this up in the honey super where no one's going to feed it. And I don't want to put it at the very bottom unless I have, you know, in this full-size box. I don't want to put it down here because they're going to transfer in pollen and there's not enough nurse bees. So this follows where you put your graphs in either method that I'm going to teach you here in a second. I want you to put that where all the nurse bees are at, where that colony is clustered right together. Option 2, now that we have the inclement weather and things are warming up a little bit, you can put the graphs in a 4/4. So this colony's front, this one's to the back, or vice versa, excuse me. And now I can put my graphs in here. But again, tons and tons of nurse bees. Lorene asks, does that option use a queen right with excluder? I do not like using an excluder for the fact I don't want my queen. I want my queen to be able to run around that whole colony. If you use a queen excluder, then the honey, if you're using this to raise queens, skip the excluder and take the excess honey off. I want tons and tons of bees. I don't want to give them extra room. And Greg, can I go back one slide? Yes, sir. So remember, where all the bees are at, if they're all in this area, that's where I'm going to put my graft. Same way here. This could be up or down, depending. But up in here, that's all honey. So if you were going to put a queen excluder, you could put it here, but give enough room for that for Lorene, for all them nurse bees to be in here. So option 2 is the 4/4. My favorite's the queen castle. Yes, if you're going to turn on and do all this different grafting, pull the old queen and put her in a nuke. Option 3 is you're going to build a cell builder, and this is raising a lot of queens at the same time. So you found the method. You're really starting to pick up on this. So step 1, open nectar on the outside, cap brood, and you're going to shake in, here in a second, you're going to shake in tons of nurse bees. No eggs. So you're going to do tons of cap brood. I want everything in here. I want these girls to be absolutely queenless. And then I'm going to put on a shaker box. A shaker box is just an empty box fitting onto that top of that nuke. I usually take duct tape around the top edge because the bees hate to cross duct tape. And then I'm going to shake in tons and tons of nurse bees. And then I'm going to put my graft, depending if I do OTS, Miller, or whatever, inside of here. And you can also use your full-size colony that you used. You can either pull the queen like Lorene asked, if they already flew, but I can't do this with a queen. I'm going to do this all up. So in this case, let's say I have 5 colonies. Instead of ripping one colony way down, I can steal a little resources from all of them and build this queen, or build this cell builder. And then 8 hours, I want them to have nothing. I want this, you hear that queenless roar the entire time. And then they're ready to pull out quality queens for you. And just so you know, you could put on a feeder on this and give them some pollen patty. So some of the ways we're going to graft, and each one has its pros and cons. I started with Cell Punch with Nina Bagley, Joe Kovaleski, Dwight Wells, and Tracy up in Cleveland. I took a class. So I learned from the scratch, and this is how I did it starting off. So a Cell Punch is a brass ring. It's a ferrule for plumbing. You got a stick. You got these little wood pucks. And what you're doing, you're heating that up with a flame, not red hot, just enough to where you punch it and it goes through. So if you look in the center, there's that egg that's standing straight up. Or that egg could be fallen. So remember we said on the day 4, 72 hours, she starts to fall. Then I'm going to take that hot ferrule, and it's a practice game. You have to practice. Again, like I talked to you, wax foundation. Don't try to do this on plastic. But I'm going to get that egg or that young larvae in the dead center. I'm going to heat that ferrule up, and I'm going to shove it straight through. By the time it gets to the other side, it will stick in the center. And then you're going to take that little piece and you're going to put it on a wooden puck. And you can take wax, you can rub wax and hit it with the flame a little bit, or a little blowtorch or one of the barbecue warmers. Warm up that wax, put that little puck, and then you're never going to touch the dead center of this. That's that cell. See how they're around the outside? It can be a little bit warped, but you're never going to touch that egg or that cell in the center. Do not do this in full sunlight because it'll dry it out. So you're just going to make up a little bar of this, and then as you put that in your cell builder, so let's go back to the cell builder. There's my cell builder. Try 5 of them at a time. Or whatever you have that you can do in a very short time. Get some practice at it. You know, if you go over to here, your frame might look like Swiss cheese. And some of the ones that Dwight Wilson used to let me practice on, I probably had 75 holes in it. What do they fill it with? Drones. So when you sell this, once you get it pulled out and they cap it, then you just pop off the puck, you shove it against in frames of emerging brood, and there's your queen. It's easy to do. And you can get the Cell Punch rings through Man Lake, Dayton, and Brushy Bee. I just checked that before tonight. So there's a way to do it. You didn't have to graft. You didn't have to see the larvae. All you had to do is see at the bottom of the cell. You heated up the brass ring, melted it through. There's the puck. You shove it in. Good to go. OTS, on the spot from Mel Dissicone. I was just up at his barber shop. I just got back from Michigan a couple weeks ago. Our club had him as a presenter. OTS is on the spot. Again, we all have hive tools, and this is how you can raise queens with your hive tool. So I'm going to look for a frame of eggs, or the eggs that have just dropped. See that little bit of royal jelly, and there's a row of eggs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hive tool, and I'm going to go 1/3 of that cell. Do not touch the eggs or larvae. So here's the cell, and I'm going to come in here to that lower third, shove it to the foundation, bend that hive tool down, and then pull back. And what it's going to do, this cell's going to sit up here. This has to be a queenless colony. So either the old queen left, you pulled the queen, or you made a cell builder that's queenless, and you're going to do OTS. So what you can do, I never touch the eggs. If you bump or crush the eggs, move your hive tool over it again. Young larvae or that row of eggs, it doesn't matter. It's all good. And then what you're going to do, So there's the hive tool. You crush that bottom 1/3. Right here, he never touched the larvae, but it crushes the cells down. And what it gives the bees, it gives them a jump start to start pulling that cell out. So once they sense that they're queenless, in a full-size colony, about 40 minutes is what I've heard through different. Jim too also says it, about an almost 45 minutes to an hour. Then you'll hear that queenless roar if you've got a colony apart. So they smell that they're queenless, and they'll start pulling these out in the lower right. Now there's 3 cells side by side. Here's another one. So what I'll tell you, in a big colony, so if you're doing a full-size colony and you have 3 frames of eggs, notch on this side of the frame once or twice, on this side once or twice. You can also take that hive tool and tilt it so the 45 or the tip of that sharp tip, and you can crush in 1 or 2 cells at a time. On the top of that frame, put a thumbtack or take a fat black felt tip marker and put an X at the top of it, straight up where that cell was. And now you have these little black X's or thumbtacks, and you know where them grafts are at. So what's going to happen? Day 10, you're going to come back and check these. The bees might pull those out, but the bees might go, hey, we got a super sister that smelled better, and we pulled some additional ones out. So on this frame, what I want, if it's wax foundation, so I'm going to take my hot knife or my utility blade, and I'm going to cut it out around the outside. If the frame only has 2 eggs on it or 2 cells that are pulled completely out, you can take that frame, remember, and start a split. Now you got 2 cells. If you have multiples on there, let's say 5 or 6, remember, you don't want that small, tiny queen, you want that fat one. If I got 5 big cells, and let's just say it looks like that, there's a beautiful, beautiful cell. The bottom of it is just starting to get thinned out a little bit, but let's say there's 5 of them on a frame. What am I going to do? I'm going to take and I'm going to cut around through the foundation all the way through, and I'm going to cut all the way through this. I'm never going to touch or manipulate that egg. So I want that queen cell to stay in the same formation. And I'm going to take it over, and then I'm going to push in the corners. I'm going to make a split. I'm going to keep this in the same orientation. And when I put it to the new frame of brood, I'm going to push in these 4 little corners and push that into the wax with the brood of another colony or my split. I never touched it. They smell it. As soon as they get in there, they'll start getting on top of it and gyrating and warming it up. And they turn around, pull out another queen. She turn around, chews out to the bottom, and you just made another split. Yes, you kind of destroyed. If you have wired foundation, it's a little bit harder. So I'm just going to be honest. That wire will mess with you. But there's a nice way to do it. What if I have multiples? Now I have 3, and I have 1 down here. Do I want them 4 queens? This one's kind of runty. So take the hive tool and kill it, or take a toothpick and poke a couple holes in it, and the bees will destroy it for you. So what can I do? Now I take my knife and I cut around here, not touching the cells, keeping this lysing in the corners, and then I can leave this one in that colony, or I can turn around and take these 3, make a split, and make another split here. Now I took that whole frame, and maybe there's some on the back that I could use it that way. Greg asked, why? This is why I like the fish line. That is very good. He uses the fish line instead of using the wire supports. And that you got one up on the support, so you can train somebody on this. So I can try and take those eggs or queen cells, excuse me, make 2 more splits, and say on this frame, I have more on the back side. I could leave that, cut these. The bees will fill this back in with drone brood or worker brood, and I'm off to the races. If you have multiple cells and you think, what else can I do? Maybe you don't have all this crazy gear. Number 8 frame. The same thing we have on our bottom boards. It's the number 8, so there's 8 little squares per inch. It's hard to find, so talk to some of the beekeepers in your club that can get some number 8. Put it on the end of a 2x4 and bend it over And then you want the side walls of this thing being 3/4 of an inch. And you want it, you can put it any kind of irregular or regular shape. I always got a little box of probably 50 of them. Now, if I have a big colony and I have tons of cells and I don't want to have to sit here and cut them all apart, I can use a really strong cell builder or a full-size colony and put cages over. I want you to do this. When you shove that in, I want you to shove that all the way into the midrib. Shove it all the way in. Because once that, even if you get some workers underneath, that's even better yet. Or blow some workers or scoop them with the wire, put it right over that cell. Do not bump that cell. And shove it all the way to the foundation into the midrib. For the fact, once the queen emerges, if she's got another queen nearby, now they start to pipe, the other workers will chew underneath that wire and try to kill that other queen or the inferior smelling queen. So you can do this on one side. And when you put it in your cell builder, then that wire is going to take up extra gap. So leave a frame out. You can also do this on the other side. So let's just say this is one frame here. Here's another frame. Instead of having all these all done and waiting for one that might not emerge or something happens, now I make up a really strong cell builder and I have all 7 of these in one box. And then when you do it, you have to be, this is some skill. When you take that wire up and bend it up, that virgin queen's running around, pick her up, use nitrile gloves, not leather. You want that nice fine touch. So surgical gloves, pull that wire up, pick up that queen by her wings. If you're not good at picking up queens, I want you to use nitrile gloves and go out and pick up drones by the wings. You know, drones ain't going to sting you. You have nothing to worry about. Pick them up till you pick them up, and all they do, their legs are out front, and all they're doing is buzzing. Then, when you get good at that, and you pick them up the same way each time, you put them back down and they walk away. Then start picking up workers. If you pick up workers that same way, and you get that perfect where you grab them in the back, I always like them when they're walking to my left. I pick them up with the right, and I got them. If you pick them up wrong, how are you going to know? They're going to sting your fingertips. And you know that she got her abdomen around, or you picked her off left or right, and she could get her fingers around to sting you. Then do the same touch with a queen. You pick her up by the wings, pick her up, then you can mark her if you want to, set her back down into another colony or a JBZ or California. You're off to the races. Now I don't have to have all that other gear. I can raise them all in one box. The NICOT system. I used this for probably 2 years with Dwight Wilson. It's about I think it's $130 if I'm not mistaken. I have not looked it up for a while. But the NICOT actually has all these little cups, these little caps here. You put them inside, all these little things. It's like kind of like bingo. You press it in and you put your queen on the inside. And you tons and tons of nurse bees. They're feeding her through the cage and she lays those eggs in these little cups. So you check this, you pop this top off, you always look and look and look. Once you see eggs or eggs that drop into that first little larvae, you have to get them out because there's not enough nurse bees to feed royal jelly. So this is something you have to stay on top of, you know, checking it every 8 hours if you have the time. You have to make time for this. Once there's eggs, then you're going to come over here, and there it is right here with, right there is that egg standing up and with a little royal jelly. So she just laid that egg. There's other NICOT systems that have it this way. So now I put all my eggs in. I put it down inside of a full-size colony or my cell builder and look at all my nurse bees. By what the ABC XYZ of beekeeping says is these queens are fed 10,000 times. That means the vitellogelin in the top, so that little great string of nurse bees that regurgitate royal jelly, each one goes in there and puts a little spit of royal jelly. So you'll see one worker go up inside, she'll spit it. It'll suspend. She'll come out, next one in, next one in. And supposedly up to 10,000 times that she's fed enough royal jelly that she completely emerges into taking a worker, inverting the cell, feeding her royal jelly the whole time, and out emerges a queen. So this is a nice system. I ended up selling mine for like $50 to somebody in a queen class because you have to stay on top of it. And it's something you have to monitor all the time. One of the other easy ones is the Miller method. This is taking a frame, and I'm going to go with what Greg said on this. You can take the frame with the fishing line in it, with wax foundation, and all you're going to do, and this is made by Charles Miller back in 1911, so they did this well too, and you're just going to go in here with frames of eggs in this area, and you're going to cut zigzags out of it. And what you're doing, you're cutting along where the eggs are at, so the eggs are hanging a little bit, and then they're going to start drawing that into cells. So it's an easy way. Moto asked, will a virgin queen sting you? Yes, they will. I generally don't wear gloves when I catch queens for marking them. And that, if you can get away with no gloves, that's even better. I have picked up queens. My worst is a mated queen, and she got her stinger underneath my fingernail, and I said a few cuss words out in the apiary. It does sting. For the 99 that you're going to do, you might get 1 or 2 stings. They don't, but if you hold them from the wings and you've practiced from drone to worker to queen, you pick them up. I can hold them now, take my marker. I take modeling, the little Testors paint. I use fluorescent colors, so I can take my UV, let me get it here, my UV flashlight. If you all see the UV flashlight, I can take this because I check my colonies at night because I'm usually doing stuff during the day. I can take this UV flashlight, shine it across the frame, and the queens pop right at you. Check this, or you can look between the gaps and go, well, there's my queen. It's an easy way to do it. Curious, queens don't die when they sting? No, they don't. They have a straight barb, and they'll just sting you, and then sit back and relax and wait for you to do it again. So on the Miller method on this, what you're going to do, right there, as you make those V's, right there is they're going to draw out those queens. So remember on this, you're going to have wax foundation. I do like Greg's method on this, using the fishing line. That is a great method to do that. And here's one on day 10. Now, on 11, 12, and 13, that's my critical fine china time. I'm not going to move them. When I get to day 13 and 14, now I'm going to start, getting my cell builders ready, getting my nukes ready, getting my stuff ready, and then go out here and cut my cells. So we went from drawn out eggs. We turn around and cut Z's in it, along with the eggs, wherever the eggs are at, right along that. I don't want fat larvae because you can't convert an old worker or old larvae or pupae worker into a quality queen. So it has to be all eggs. They drew them out. So you could get 5, you could get 10. And now I have all these queens. So let's just say I have these queens. So what can I do? Take my utility blade or a sharp bread knife or them little paring knives, fishing knives. There's a split. So I just took 2. Made another split with those 2. Made a split down with the bottom. I took those 3. I killed off the weakest one or the smallest one. Made another split. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7 with those 2. 8 with the bottom. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I made 14 splits. Now, is that guaranteed that all those queens are going to go out and mate, make a quality queen and come back? No. But that's where you have to let them go out. So now I know that this is day 10. It could be day 13, depending on when that egg was laid. But they go out, they're going to mate. Or first, they emerge on day 16. They have to sexually mature. Their keratin on their wings and their exoskeleton hardens off up to 7 to 10 days. And then they go out in a mating flight for 7 to 10 days. And was the weather right? And then they're going to get picked off and other things are going to happen. But I just have 14 splits right there that I can do. And I didn't even have to do anything other than take a sharp knife and cut through the eggs. Easy way to do it. The overpopulation method, there's a way to do this also. And either you're overpopulated on a nuke or a full-size colony or a cell builder. Again, those 3 methods. And this is one that I kind of stole from Randy Oliver. I talked to Nina. Nina does this in a different way too. And then I started it. And I do this for if I got a queen that's in a nuke and really pouring it on, instead of having to put her in another colony and do all this stuff again and graft and all that, this is a way to let them do the work for you. So on the doodlet, this is a cross of penny or queens for pennies, the Doolittle method with no work to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my hive tool. You can do this on wax foundation. I'm going to stick it down the center. I'm going to scrape it all the way down to the bare plastic. There it is. And you can do this on a frame of eggs. So you're going to waste a little bit, but you're going to let the bees do the work for you. And then I'm going to take the JBZ cups and I'm going to shove them in so the opening of the cup is in that dead zone area. So when they start to draw out the queen cell, they're not attaching it to anything else. So there's my cups, and I'm going to put this, remember, we're going to put this in an overpopulated colony or a cell builder or something that you're going to make. And that's what happens. So there you can see it scratched down to the foundation. I put in my JBZs. I put a different color for different queens. So if I see one that's, that got the tiger stripes, is it a real Carnolian or Cardovan? No. But I liked the way she pulled out. Brood. I like the way she walked around and her bees are nice and calm. Greg, can I go back one slide? Yes, I can. So remember, take the foundation, scratch it all the way down, and you can put yourselves in 3 or 4 cups. Start out small. Robert, he had to run. Thank you very much, Robert. And I'll take care of everybody till the end. So this is what you're going to do. Scratch it all the way down. And then as they're overpopulated, you're going to keep shaking in nurse bees and giving them tons and tons of resources. Put in some pollen patty. Put on a sugar water on the top. As they get overflushed, even if they swarm, they're going to leave you 4 daughters. And I usually check them enough. I have some small fruit trees, and you'll see these little tiny swarms where one of the queens came out of these 4/4s or my queen castles. They're hanging out. My granddaughter usually sees it. I pick her up, but I got some daughters in between. When you see this, there's some things I can see. Number one, it's a quality draw out. It's capped. She's still got tons and tons of royal jelly. That means she's fed royal jelly the entire time. If she didn't have any royal jelly in here, I'd kill that queen right off the bat. Because what if she starved out on day 11? Is she fully developed? No. Maybe she starved out on day 12 or 13. When she emerges, I still want royal jelly in here. So that's a good way to do that. It's another way. If you have a nuke on the side and you want to put it in and you want the bees to lay it for you, I didn't have to graft. I didn't have to do anything. I wasted some eggs when I scratched it. I set it in and I just let them build. So what can you do with your nuke? If your nuke's off to the side and you don't want to sit and play with it all the time, but you want it for a resource, let her raise 4 or 5 queens for you. And that's an easy way to do it. Now we're getting into Doolittle. So some of you that start with any of these back, so we got Miller Method, we have OTS, we have Cell Punch. It's something that every one of you can do. If you want to get into this a little bit more, and now you get into, well, I want to graft, and I want grafting bars and all this, take a class with either somebody in your area, a mentor that grafts and does this, because you're really getting into, now you have to have the eyesight, you have to be able to see 72 hours that larvae dropped into the bottom, you have to have cups, you have to be able to graft it, and Peggy, you can type in here, are you going to have a grafting class this year? So Peggy might be having a grafting class. I know we have one in Northwest Ohio up here between me and Roger on the 11th of June. And you can look for BSBA for that. If you guys want to travel up this way, it's your call. Peggy Garn said she'd be able to. So if you want to learn this method, there's a lot to it. But now you're grafting, 5 or 6 or 10 at a time. I still suggest no matter what you do, only graft 3. Just because that bar has 15 holes in it doesn't mean you have to fill up all 15. You have to have the nurse bees, you have to have healthy bees, and you have to have all this other stuff with it. As where all the other methods, you're only getting 2 or 3 or 5 queens at a time. Nice, and remember, small scale. This is kicking it up about 2 notches. And the hardest part about this, and I'll be honest, when I first started beekeeping now, probably 17 years ago with Dwight, I could, with my bare eyes, I could see when that egg, and you see this blow up in here, from that egg to that larvae. I used to be able to see that with my raw eyes. Take the German tool, pick that larvae up, put it in a cup. Then I went to bifocals probably 4 years ago, and now I got trifocals just for grafting. So you have to be able to do that. If you do not have good eyesight, honestly, young women that do needlepoint are some of the best grafters I've ever seen. I had a girl one time, 24, 25. It was a guy's daughter. She does needlepoint. I said, here's 10 cups. I just want you to practice. By the time I gave everybody the gear, she goes, I'm done. And I thought she was joking. I looked over. Every cell was at the bottom. She used the Japanese tool and she went bing, 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 just like a sewing machine. So if you have somebody that can work with you, or you can kind of give some honey to that wants to work with you, now you can get into this method. You start having JBZ bars, grafting bars. It is neat when you have a successful period like that and you can raise multiple queens. I'm going to tell you a quick story. So I want everybody to think about this. This is Dwight Wilson. So for those of you that don't know him, when I started with Dwight, he gave me 10 full colonies and said, these are yours. The very first day I met him. And I had only talked to him on the phone before that. He gave me 10 full colonies. He said, no matter what you do, you could kill these, you can make splits. If you make honey, it's your honey. You can make queens, you can do this, you can make a cut comb. Gave me the world to play with. So I said, I want to raise queens. My very first graft is right here. Right about here was one queen. I grafted like 35 times. The only person that was happy, and I'll tell you what, it was like taking a fat kid in a candy shop. I was jumping up and down for joy. I'm like, I made a queen. And Dwight keeps looking at me and he goes, are you okay? I said, why? And he goes, Jamie, you only have one queen. You should have had 30. I said, I still had one queen. And that's what I want you guys to get, at least one queen. Get that happiness that you get. It doesn't matter what your failures are. You can fail and fail and fail again. You get that one queen underneath your belt, then you turn that into 2, and then 3, into 4, into 5. And start building upon your success. And if you have failures, ask why. See what maybe you did wrong. Off to the right of this is what I can successfully do now. That's roughly 45 queens. I can do 80, 85%, 90% success, depending on the resources. And I can do this day after day after day. My hardest part is making the cell builder and doing all that. That's labor intensive. I did one for Roger's Club up in his area towards Toledo, Ohio. I grafted and did 150 queens in like 45 minutes. And we had like 90% success. And Roger goes, how do you do that? It's by practice. So kind of be inspired that, even if you get one queen out of it, it's a queen that you made. You didn't have to pay $40 for it. You didn't have to do anything for it. You just practice a method to be sustainable. If you really get into this, you can get into instrumentally inseminated. Hands down, Crispin Given and Purdue, you want to go over there? It's not cheap. I'm going to tell you this. By the time you get the gear, you're going to be $2,000-3,000 into it. By the time you turn on and get the class, another $1,000 into it. But now you can get genetics, and then you can turn on and have Purdue stock, ankle biters, pure Russians, pure stuff. But that's what you do underneath a microscope. You collect the semen, you invert the endophallus of the drone, you collect the semen on the end, and everything in this is fail, fail, fail. It's, if you touch it to your finger, it's contaminated semen. If you squeeze the drone and he pees on it, it's contaminated. If you don't have all your equipment clean, it's contaminated. My first queen was number 28. And again, Crispin Given said, he goes, you killed 8 queens, but you got 1. And everybody else had 2, 3, and 4. And I said, I don't care. I walked away with 1. And she laid for almost 2 years. And a beautiful thing. Introducing queens. And I'm going to run over this real quick. So now you have that queen, what are you going to do? You're going to put her in a JBZ. You're going to put her in a California. And I want you to be able to, if you're not going to keep it yourself, I want you to be able to, if you're going to give these away or sell these to other beekeepers or club members, how to tell them and yourself how to release these and how to put them in cages. So now I got these virgin queens running around. What do? I can put them in cages. And then when you put them in a cage, I want you to look at the frame of emerging brood, and I want you to pick out them nice little blonde bees that just emerged. Pick them up by the wings. They don't even know how to sting you. And you turn around and pick it up, and you put them inside, and put about 2 or 3 workers with that queen, and then put in the queen candy or the cap, and then put them inside. Release them on day 3. They need to run around. They need their spermatheca to develop. They need 150 fallopian tubes on both sides to develop, and they need to run around. They can't do it in this little tiny cage. So we're going to talk about some introductions. Remember, when you try and start putting like all these Californias together, there was some crappy queens on this end because they're not being fed. Other than that, look at the queens here. They're being fed tons and tons of royal jelly. So a California cage, you can drill it out with a 5/8 drill bit. Virgin queens need fed constantly, so you need to make up queen candy. And there's a whole recipe with that. If you want to know, contact me. I'll be glad to share it with you. So there's tons of things to do, and this is one of my yards. There's a cell builder. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23 queens in that. But they need fed all the time. What to do is just start to making up nukes. So you don't have to bank them and do things, but to make up nukes. So remember, if you raise 5 queens, you now have to have 5 nukes. Or 2 queen castles that have 6 bays. So 3 each. Or depending on the gear. So it's fun. It's absolutely amazing to raise queens. But if I raise 20 queens, now I have to have 20 places for them. So remember, when you're building up a strong nuke, 3 frames of brood, frame of pollen and honey, and a frame of partially drone. You want those nurse bees to work on something. If this 5 frame at the bottom gets jammed up, what do? Put on another 5 frame. Some of the things that I use is for the queens. This is my traveling cover. It's got that mason jar with the flywheel cutter, or you can use a hole saw and then take some sandpaper and sand it out. But these are what I set up all day long, and they go. And I use a grease pencil in the top. If you have a queen, if I check this nuke and she's doing everything I want, pouring a good pattern, she's got that, she gets a star in the corner. Now, if I open that up and they're jumping in my face, or they're stinging me, or crawling all over me, or they're just absolutely spastic, she gets a strike in the left top corner. If she gets 3 strikes, off with her head. If she gets 3 stars, then she gets to go to the big yard. So only graft from quality stock that you have. Mohammed, go back to the other frame. Yep, I can do that. So I'll take a screenshot of that. So remember, 3 good frames of brood. I want tons of bees crawling all over it. The honey, the pollen. And if you don't have all the honey and pollen, remember, put on a sugar water on the top, put another empty box, put your telescoping cover, put on a feeder on the top, and give them a little bit of pollen patty, not a whole gigantic patty, so they can consume it within 3 to 5 days. So there's the time to qualify. If these queens are good, I can put them in a JBZ box, or I can put them in a cage, or I can put them in a battery box from Man Lake, and I can take them to a club meeting, $40 a queen. There you go. So the rewards, there's your queens. This is called banking. This is kind of a way over the top. But if you get to this and you got tons of queens, right there you see pollen patty, all kinds of stuff. And you can do this too. Every one of you can do this. Remember, there's JBZ, 3-hole, California. Depending on the cage you have, your resources nearby, what you can get. If you want to purchase queens, a lot of people that purchase queens, they want nurse bees on the inside. So that queen's being fed the entire time. Go to a club meeting. Somebody says, I want 2 queens from you. Put it in a battery box. There's 2 queens. You put a little bit of fondant on the inside, a piece of sponge, and then you can turn around and put that together, hand them the box, and they just bring you back the box later. Or you can upcharge it. I think they're $5.50 a piece, so you charge them an extra $6 and they can keep the box. Carol, how long can you leave a virgin banked? No more than 2 weeks. I've seen the stuff out of Purdue says less. I've heard other people say 24, 25 days. But remember, when she comes out and after she sexually matures, that spermatheca only stays open for an X amount of days. And after that, it shuts down. Now, if you want a queen that lays all drones, remember we talked about having our out yards? If you want a queen that just lays tons of drones in a nuke, now you've just populated the drones up like crazy. But remember, you're going to have high varroa load because of drones. But it's a way to beef up your drones, because remember, drones, they can go in any colony. So even if you beef it up and let them go for 20 days, take them frames and freeze them, now you've just populated tons of drones all over. Constant feeding. When you pull up a frame with a queen on it, if this is the thing, I want to brush my finger off, and if the bees run right back and keep trying to feed her, she's got great QMP. She's doing great. Same way with a JBZ. This is a California, here's a JBZ. Them bees are running back. They're trying to feed her like crazy. And when they first emerge, putting queen candy, and all it is honey with powdered sugar. And you're just liquefying it with your hand, and you're kneading it like dough until it turns a little bit wet. You don't want it slimy because their head or mouth will stick to it, but you want it just doughy enough that you can push it into the cage and they can eat from it. Remember, when you turn on to have a queen, you're going to sell these queens, or you're going to do stuff or introduce them into your nukes. In California cages, make sure that snout is up. So that way, if you have other nurse bees in here and they die, they roll to the back. And that way the house bees can eat the candy out, the queen can eat from the inside, and no matter what, on day 3, release her. If you look in between the frames here, notice how the screen is open. I want the nurse bees to be able to feed her. And I've done this, and I've told people that buy queens from me, they'll take the screen and shove it into the frame. And then they call me and say, well, the queen's dead in the cage. Well, send me a picture, and you'll see this screen stuck right into the wax because they said, well, it stuck better. Well, yeah, it stuck better, but now they can't feed her. If you shove it in where the brood's at, them nurse bees should come right up and start feeding her. This is what I want to see. Don't try to do it. And if somebody shoves that wax into the frame and it dies, that's on their luck. Same way with a JBZ. Make sure that snout is up or down. My method, and I learned this from Dwight Wilson, take a toothpick and shove it through. Do not skewer the queen. And I know some of you are laughing, but don't. If there's some workers in here, what happens? The workers might die. They drop to the bottom. That way they're not dropping up here and they can't get out. That way the queen can eat. And remember, on day 3 again, you're going to open it up and you're just going to watch her walk on out. If she walks out and walks over the frame and walks down, she's all golden. If she starts to walk out and bees are balling her, that is a possibility that they don't like her genetics, or they don't like what she is, or her QMP, and they ball her. Then you can try to pull it apart, but most of the time, by the time the bees ball her, she's done. So there is a possibility that you took a queen from somewhere else that had a different QMP or queen smell. You stick her into a colony and they want their queen. They don't want an outside queen. So just be familiar with that. There's also the number 8 screen. You can do the push-in cage. Take that virgin queen, the mated queen that comes back. Instead of putting them in a JBZ or California, you're going to take that mated queen. You're going to shove her underneath this wire, shove it to the midrib, and she's going to walk around. It's like an introduction cage. And then she's going to lay eggs, and after about a week, 2 weeks, you can pull this frame up and watch, and if she keeps right on walking along, you're good to go. Remember, in a battery box, you can ship these. Take a little bit of hot glue, put it on the back. You can ship them. You still got tons of ventilation. And please remember, if you take these to a club meeting, ask the person, even if they pick it up at your house, how long are you going to turn on before you take it from me to take it and put it in your bees? And if they say, oh no, I'm going to go shopping in Toledo and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, take that battery box, crack their windows and shove it underneath the seat in the car. Keep it out of direct sunlight. If you hear the bees in that container, in that battery box, and they're going crazy, sound like a queenless colony, take some water and pour water through it. Give them something to drink. Let them cool down because they're getting overheated. And do not fill that entire box with tons and tons of nurse bees for 2 little queens when they already have resources in there, and make sure that sponge is wet. So you could easily take that queen, cage her up at 3, 4 o'clock, get ready for a meeting that next night at 7 o'clock, show up, that person takes it, and then they can take it out to the bee yard that next morning, take it in the house where it's nice and cool, put a little bit of water, or you could put a little bit of sugar water, kind of spritz it with a spray bottle or anything, spritz it through the holes. They can take it out the next morning. But don't let this thing sit for more than 2 or 3 days. They'll be dead. And to answer Carol's question, all the research that I've ever asked, and I've talked to a bunch of people about this, if you bank virgin queens, no more than 2 weeks. And you have to keep feeding them, so you have to have tons of nurse bees in the top. This has queen candy with blue painter's tape, so they can't chew it out. And then all these California cages are tilted to the side, and then I shove in queen candy, so it brings the nurse bees up. They start feeding on the queen candy, and then right there is the queen with her tongue out, and she's begging for food. So all these queens, within 2 weeks, you got to do something. Make up more nukes. You got to sell them. You got to do splits. You have to do something with that. But that's when you're really getting into this. And I challenge everybody, and I will gladly accept a phone call, text, email, whatever. If you want to raise some queens, tell me about your success. Send me an email and say, you know what, Jamie, I tried it. It didn't work. And then I'm gonna entice you to do it again. You do it again, and you raise 1 queen. Hey, you're on cloud 9. So hopefully that I taught you at least something tonight. I hope I answered everybody's questions. And you're welcome to unmute yourself. Bobby says, is queen candy just honey and powdered sugar until it's a marshmallow consistency? Yes. So what you do, you take the honey, put it in the microwave where you can warm it up to so you can touch it. So you can put your finger in it. Don't get it where it's boiling. And you're going to take powdered sugar. So what I do is I take a cereal bowl, fill it full of powdered sugar, and then put a little hole in the center. Put a little doppel of in the center. Take 1 tablespoon of hot honey or warm honey and put it in the center. And then take that spoon and shove it around until it absorbs. Sometimes you think, oh, it's all absorbed. You start touching it with your finger, and now all of a sudden it gets sticky again. And then run it in more powdered sugar. It will take you a boatload of powdered sugar to get that little bit of honey stiff enough to be into that marshmallow consistency. And your fingers will be sore at the end of the day. Brian says, in the past, I split a hive without having queen ready and used OTS method to prompt the bees to make a queen. If I understand you correctly, I can make the split in the comb of the mother hive, wait until the queen cells are made, and then do the split. Is that correct? So let me reread this real quick. In the past, queen hive, OTS method, made the queen. If I understand, I can make this split in the comb of the mother hive, wait until the queen cells are made, and then do... Absolutely. So you're going to take the mother hive, wait until the queen cells are made when they're capped for OTS. Or they're just getting to that full length, and you're starting to see that roundness where they're starting to come around it. Then you can turn around and make the split with that. But remember, as fragile as your grandmother's crystal. Jeff Jones, thanks for entertaining and information. Excited to make some queens. Good, Jeff. I hope you make a bunch of them. So hopefully I answered everybody. Great presentation. Thank you very much, Greg. Queen class in the works. Queen classes are in the works. Good. Good, Peggy. Wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, Sarah and Fred. So I love teaching. I love doing this stuff. So I want everybody to at least try one and then shoot me a text. You got my number. Oh, let's see. One more. So my number is 419-438-7335. I guarantee you'll get a response. Lickety split. Phone calls, it all depends what I'm doing. And then I got a couple Facebook pages that I do. But hopefully that helps you. So you're welcome to take my number. I'm glad to help out anybody that needs it.
Turn on my camera.
Can you post contact information right there? And it might go away because I think I got a timer set up for that. So hopefully that helps you, Greg. Reach out to me and I'll be glad to help anybody.
Hey, Jamie, real
Yes,
quick. Randy here. I'm the Summit County inspector and
All right.
happy to do inspections. If somebody wants me to come out, send an email to officers@summitbeekeepers.com and I will get you on the schedule.
and use your resources. I mean, us inspectors, we're there to help you guys, and he can tell you healthy brood and help you along, and that's what I'm up here in Defiance for, the same way.